Well, the Stanley Cup may have been awarded to the Tampa Bay Lightning, but there's plenty of things to discuss in the off-season for hockey. The Seattle Kraken will have their expansion draft. There's the NHL draft, and then there's free agency, all coming up in the month of July. Broadcast Boost Sessions will tackle all of that today. In our inaugural episode, my first guest is Bryan Mudryk, the play-by-play voice of the Montreal Canadiens on TSN, and he will talk about the Canadian season that was and his experience covering the Under-18 tournament in Texas. Well, it's the first episode of Broadcast Boost Sessions, and I'm happy to be joined by my guest, Bryan Mudryk, who is joining us after what has been a very, very busy season for him, involved in calling Montreal Canadiens regional games, lots of curling, the U18s that happened out in Texas. Bryan, you've really kind of done it all. You got to be kind of proud of your body of work this season.
Yeah, you know, it's been a lot of fun. And to be honest, Stephen, it's kind of been a saving grace. I think through the pandemic, a lot of people had challenges, many, whether it was family or health or missing family and friends or being separated from people. So once I actually got back in the booth, I think you kind of get your sense of purpose back, you know, and yeah, it was crazy. It was pretty wild because went from really, you know, waiting like everyone else to see, is the world going to open up? What are things looking like from a health perspective across Canada and, of course, the United States and the NHL? So once we got back going in January, it was like, boom, it was like, away we go. So, you know, the Habs, as you know, and your viewers will know all too well, not the greatest regular season at times, but a really exciting Stanley Cup final run and all the way to the final, which is pretty cool to watch. The curling bubble, you know, like crazy that even we were able to pull that off and the athletes pulled it off. So it was great. You know, it was great to be back to work. And I think, I hope we got better times ahead here, Stephen. So yeah, grateful to have some time to golf now and drink a little red wine. Summer,
well,
right?
let's get right into it with the topic that everybody wants to talk about, the Montreal Canadiens, 18th best record, I believe, in the regular season, down 3-1 to Toronto, and then a magical run. I have to ask you, did you see this team as the playoffs began as a team that was built for success in the playoffs? Or were you like a lot of people and felt, well, you know what, I just don't think it's going to be their year, 5 or 6, Toronto is too strong, and then they're going to be out? How did you feel about the team?
Oh, come on, Stephen. How do you think I paid for the wine? I knew right away. I cashed it. Oh, are you kidding? No. You know, the Habs, I did a lot of media after the regular season. Obviously, they crawled in, as you know, 4th in the North. And at times, you know, their thing was consistency or lack thereof it during the regular season. And, you know, they moved into the 4th spot. I think people, too, forget how much adversity. I mean, I know every team was dealing with COVID and what was going on. But, you know, Claude Julien gets fired. You know, Dominic Ducharme comes in with the interim coaching tag. They didn't have the consistency. Carey Price suffered that concussion. Alex Chiasson and Edmonton kind of in the late stages of the regular season. I think Jake Allen obviously was a big reason why they kind of limped into the playoffs. And you had Gallagher hurt. I don't think Weber was 100%, and we'll learn more, you know, as the guys talk with the Stanley Cup final now over. However, I said this even during the Leafs series. I said, you have Shea Weber back healthy-ish, or as healthy as Shea can be. Carey Price was back. And if you look at how they played in the bubble, Carey Price was outstanding. Nick Suzuki and Kotkaniemi were awesome. I've got to watch Cole Caulfield for a couple of years at the under-18s, and the records he smashed. And I don't know if Cole, and I think he's getting that respect now, but at every level, you know, people will tell me the same thing. Oh yeah, but he's too small. He played with Jack Hughes. He smashed Austin Matthews' record in the United States national team development program. He had a 70-goal season. That's a season, okay? He tied Ovechkin's tournament record at the U18s, 14 goals in a single tournament. I mean, at every level, the kid's just performed. And, you know, when he finally got in, you saw what he can do. You know, Kotkaniemi, Suzuki, Romanov, who finally got some action, scored a goal, actually, in the Stanley Cup final, his first and his second ever NHL goal. So, I mean, you know, the kid stepped up. the veteran guys that they signed. Mark Bergevin deserves a tip of the cap for all the work he did. Edmondson's looking like a heck of a signing. How about the re-signing of Jeff Petrie to get him at the value he did? I mean, just an incredible skater. The veteran guys they brought in, Corey Perry, was doing his thing all playoff long. Eric Stahl, just the guys I think they brought in to really solidify that room. And if you hear to a man, every single player, whether it was Gallagher after losing finally in Game 5, whether it was Philip Danault, the pride that they had and the emotion on Gallagher's face of the team and how they came together. So I'm not going to say, you expected to make the Cup final. Come on. Yeah. However, they were built with the veterans. They had arguably one of the best goalies in the world if he found his game, and Carey Price, and Carey did. He played outstanding. I know he was hard on himself in the first 2 games of the Cup final, saying he should have been better. But no, Steven, they were kind of one of those teams. Like I look back to the Edmonton Oilers who crawled in back when they lost that final to the Carolina Hurricanes that year, right? But they had the horses, like Chris Pronger, you'll remember that year. So you got to get into the dance, and then you can dance, right? And yeah, the Habs just had that nice little spark, that combination. So it was really, for me, selfishly, I'm done after the regular season, but it was really cool to see that run and sit down on the couch like the rest of everybody, and just,
A couple of guys I want to go back to Caulfield for a second, because when he was drafted by Montreal, there was that talk, does he have the size? Is he too small? You talked about the 70 goals that he scored. He reminds me of a guy like an Alex DeBrincat, who was also called too small, and he can, simply put the puck in the net. He's really become a fan favorite in Montreal. And I am wondering, does he have the sort of personality to be able to kind of handle being that sort of person in Montreal?
Oh, yeah. Cole's a gamer. Come on. Like at every level, he's young, obviously, but at every level of coming up, he has dominated goalies, and he has scored on the best in the world at his age class, right? The NHL, let's be honest, he wins the Hobey Baker in Wisconsin, has a heck of a year. None of that surprised me, though. I've seen it since he was, 16, 17, 18 coming up. Like, the guy has immense confidence in himself. Obviously in his shot, you can see he's more than just a shooter too. He has a heck of a shot. And I remember, I couldn't tell you all the chirps that I got on Twitter. All I would ever tweet out was like, hey, this is the facts. This is what this kid has done. Like, yeah, well, Jack Hughes won't be on his team. Did they draft Jack Hughes as well? And this and that. I'm like, last time I checked, people in the NHL could pass the puck. Okay. Like, the kid finds the tough spots. And what I noticed with a lot of the goals that he scored, at least coming up through U18s or World Juniors, it's not like it was right on his tape all the time. He can maneuver. The best in the world, you see them. The way they drag, manipulate, and the releases on these kids now coming up, it's insane. And he's a goal scorer. And I'll ask you, what do the Montreal Canadiens lack? Like, they need a natural finishing goal, right? They don't have just throwing some out there. They don't have a McDavid or a Draisaitl or a Panarin or a Hall or a Pasternak or an Austin Matthews, right? That can just, snipe. Like, and Cole Caulfield is kind of like the one guy on that team that could maybe, you see the posts that he hit from almost behind the line on Vasilevsky. The fat kids, like, I'm not even surprised anymore that these kids I saw it at the U18s. Like, these kids feel and can score from anywhere. They're that good now. So no, to wrap up, to a bow on it, yeah, Cole Caulfield, he's confident. He's got a little cockiness to him, which I love. He believes in himself. You saw that in kind of the chirps with Robin Leonard, right? He's not backing down for people. I think it's awesome. You don't think they love that in Montreal, where they got a guy, the Rocket Richard's got a trophy outside of the Bell Center? Like, they love the flair and the scorers in Montreal.
Now, another guy I want to talk about as well, who got a lot of play, I thought, in the series, Josh Anderson. Boy, he scored the first goal of the playoffs for Montreal. Then he went into a slump, and then he just seemed to score big goal after big goal. In Game 5, he kind of crashed into the net back first, and they showed the speed that he was skating at. It was 35 kilometers an hour. A guy who scored one goal last year, then got signed to a big contract in Montreal this year, so there were questions. There's no doubt a guy like who's 6'3", 220 pounds, like Anderson is also somebody who's a force to reckon with, and a guy who could put the puck in the net. He had a really good playoffs, didn't he?
Well, what did Thomas Tatar call him? The power horse, and I'll never forget. So obviously, I've seen him in Columbus, but when you come in, you maybe see him live, like, a couple times a year, depending on how our schedule would work out with the Habs and TSN broadcasts, and you watch on TV. But I'll never forget. So the first few games I'm calling Josh Anderson as a Hab and seeing him, especially at the Bell Center, I remember looking at Dave Poulin a couple of times going, man, this guy could move. Like, he can fly. And I think, it's not like you're going to catch, people by surprise anymore, but I think if you're a defenseman or even a forward trying to get back on him, he can skate, and he's got hands, and he's big, and he's tough without taking a penalty. He can blow around you, and we've seen him score goals like that a lot. You'll remember too, Steven. He had a career high 27 in Columbus, shoulder, and that was the question mark, right? And that's why offensively they just hadn't seen a lot of him. He's young, he's built like a horse, the guy can skate. And the thing that really impressed me about him when Gallagher went down, and as anyone knows who watches that team, Gallagher's the heartbeat and the pulse of that team, okay? When Gallagher got hurt towards the end of the regular season with his hand injury, it was when they kind of needed that guy. I actually found it was Josh Anderson a lot of the time, was hitting. He'd come out, he'd play with that Gallagher fire, I would call it. And really impressive. Everything Marc Bergevin did. That signing, Tyler Toffoli was scoring at will early on. But it's not like Tyler Toffoli should be expected to be a 40 goal scorer. It's just awesome that he was able to pump in the goals he did. Josh Anderson was as advertised. And to me, what caught me off guard early on is the speed of a big man and him flying down the wing.
Last one about Montreal for you before we move on to a couple of other topics, Brian. Dominic Ducharme, as of right now, still has an interim tag attached to him. Marc Bergevin, it looked like, both of them could have been gone had they not got past Toronto. Is it just now a given that both of these guys are going to be back, and Dominic Ducharme will have that interim tag removed from him? You talked about the adversity that the team went through after letting go of Claude Julien and Ducharme. I'm not quite sure he got the credit for kind of running a pretty steady ship as Montreal went into the playoffs.
Well, and remember, how about him getting COVID? Are you kidding? Guy when he first got the job, he talked about he didn't take the paved road. He took a lot of the back and the side roads to get to where he had to be, which AKA, read between the lines, hard work, right? And listen, general managers and NHL coaches will be hired and will be fired for the rest of time. It's just how it rolls, right? But I think Dominic Ducharme should get a lot of credit. Obviously, Marc Bergevin is getting a lot of credit, right? One of the finalists, the GMs of the year. So I would totally not be shocked if he's the guy and should be the guy going forward. Also, let's tip our cap to Luke Richardson, who obviously stepped up in his absence with his COVID, and Luke Richardson did a heck of a job back there as well. And they got a good young coaching staff in there. They got a good core of young players that are coming up. And the tough part for them is you're trying to rebuild, but still do what you can when you have Price and Weber still, right? Because they're not getting younger. So and Bergevin, to his credit, that's a tough little teeter, back and forth thing, a tightrope to walk, right? And it's not going to get easier next year. And again, the Habs, what are the Habs in the normal system under the old division? Well, going back to it this season, are they coming out of the Atlantic? No, they're not, right? They're not. I don't think they're playoffs. So, but they did, and look what they did. So, yeah, I think Dominic is going to look forward to, a fresh start, starting his first, season as a head coach. I'm no insider, but come on. I don't have to be Bob McKenzie to be able to tell you that he should be fine. And I think Marc Bergevin is pretty beloved right now.
I don't think you're allowed to call yourself an insider at all. Isn't that trademarked by Bob McKenzie, Darren Dreger, and some others?
I brought up the Bob father. Listen, those guys that's way up here. Their wine cellar is way better than mine.
It looks very impressive, though. Let's move on. The one thing that you may not be an insider on, but you certainly did get a firsthand glance at in a year that was wacky for junior hockey players. The WHL and the QMJHL got part of their season in the Ontario Hockey League, never got off the ground. But you had a chance to go to Texas and call the U18s. And what spectacular hockey that was. I mean, you had a chance to see Shane Wright, who will be a number one pick probably in the next couple of years, Connor Bedard, who is simply spectacular. Those two guys play on the same team. That team, when you look at the roster up and down, how special was that and how good was that tournament?
I'm not joking when I tell you this, Stephen, and I've been blessed to call a couple Olympics and a World Championship in Prague where Crosby was the captain and so many cool things. That is one of the highlights of my career, is calling that gold medal game. So that was my 7th year, I believe, doing it. I've never even called Canada in a gold medal game because obviously, as you just alluded to, it's usually the CHL playoffs are going back home in Canada, and Canada's not always getting the best horses that they can send, and that's just the way it is. And usually, the United States National Team Development Program, it's their Stanley Cup. They always have their top dogs that they send to that tournament. I was awesome. It was great for a number of reasons to be in Texas, which was wide open from COVID. I mean, obviously it's still there, but to be able to kind of see kids in the rink again and people happy here and cheering and waving their nation's flag, whoever they were rooting for, and to see people cheering in a building again. I mean, it just made your heart feel good, right? It just was good for your soul as a hockey broadcaster and a fan. And the team was special. Dave Barr was the head coach. To have 2 kids of exceptional status. I mean, Connor Bedard is not draft eligible till 2023. Okay. And you talk about confidence. This kid just drips in it, man. Like that, the backhand goal drag move he scored. Oh man, like I'm telling you. And Shane Wright just screams Patrice Bergeron, 0.0 if not better. Like and he will be the first overall pick. Obviously, like he's an unbelievable young man. And to be a captain of a team at his age as an underage player at a U18. Hasn't happened since a guy named Connor McDavid won it for Canada back in 2013 in Sochi, Russia. It was funny how a lot of the things kind of aligned, like 2 underage guys, 2 exceptional status players. Obviously, I didn't get to know them in person. It was all still boxes and Zoom-ish interview stuff, but a lot of fun calling that. A lot of great talent on that team. For me, one of my favorite things of the year is the draft. It's kind of like my soapbox because I get to see as you know, it takes a family. It does in a village of people. And so to see finally where they end up and where they're drafted and what team's looking for what and how the ball bounces, obviously. So there's going to be a lot of really good players in that first round available.
Yeah, a couple of names to throw at you, intriguing players. First of all, Brant Clark was a guy who was talked about being a potential number 1 pick. That seems to have been taken by Owen Power. As it stands right now, though, a lot could change. A guy I saw play for Barrie his first year, and he just looked very smooth and very mature. Went to play overseas this year before joining the U18. What did you see about Brant Clark that you liked?
Not a lot to not like. First of all, just a great kid. I got to chat with him a few times. Seems like just a great young man. He can fly in on the attack. He's not scared to jump into the play offensively. I remember Craig Button, pointed it out a number of times. Like, how many times is Brant Clark below the goal line? Like, but what Dave Barr said about him, his head coach in Plano and Frisco, he's like, why he was so proud of Brant Clark, he would rarely sacrifice his defensive duties to create offense. And that's saying a lot about a young guy. That position always takes a little bit longer, it seems. And to have that hybrid. And as you look in the National Hockey League and you hear, we had Ron Francis that we chatted with, and you just talk to people, you pretty much need your defenseman active in the offense, like nowadays. Like it's gone are kind of the days that you can just be the big, lumbering blue liner back there. The Scott Stevens type that you got to be, the Cale Makars, man, the Quinn Hughes, like the hybrid of defensemen now that are really sought after. Brant Clark, him and his brother, it was cool to see. We had a picture of his kids, their family, Ottawa Senator fans. And I remember Jason Spezza, his favorite player, because he scored a hat trick on his birthday. And now this young man's not too far off from playing in the National Hockey League. So I just, seems like a can't miss kid, and coming from a great family, it sounds like.
Mason McTavish played for the Peterborough Petes. I'm focusing a little bit more on the Ontario Hockey League. He's a guy who looked like a natural goal scorer the first year. Another guy who went overseas. Great hair, great beard, great flow, all those things, which have nothing to do with drafting, by the way. But another guy who could be in the top 10 and seems to have like a little bit of everything that scouts want.
At my golf course, there's big Ottawa Senator fans, and they ask me every week, "You think he'll drop to number 10?" And I'm like, I don't know, but impressive kid. My friend Ryan Gardner, who played professionally in Switzerland for years, he's still the director of player safety for the Swiss League, and I believe it was H.C. Holton that he went and played for. Him and Brennan Othman, who was his teammate. Brennan also went over there, and they played in Switzerland. And what Ryan kept telling me is, this kid's got a shot, man. This kid has a shot. His dad was a pro hockey player as well. He played in a number of Spangler Cups, etc. Yeah. Always helps, right, when you have the pedigree of a dad or a parent or even a mom who was a pro athlete or a high-end athlete. And he comes as advertised. Yeah, Dave Barr and I joked he had a better beard than both of us. Kids like he got to wear the C when, just for precautionary reasons, the captain, Shane Wright, a couple games, he just took off. They didn't need Shane at that point, but he leads, he hits hard. He's not scared of the dirty areas. He won't back down from competition. He won't back down from physical play. He's got a heck of a shot, and he just looks like a gamer. He looks like a competitor. Like who's not a GM putting your hand up for all those qualities? So big fan of his. I really enjoyed his tournament.
You're biased, I know, because you've been calling this tournament for a few years, but I was glad to see the U18s really get the spotlight. Of course, the circumstances, weren't ideal, because you're seeing a lot of these draft eligible guys playing for their country in a short tournament format. Scouts love it as well. I was glad to see the tournament really get some publicity and a lot more eyes on it than usual, because it is really special to see these young men who may not even be drafted in the draft this year, but even down the road a year or two later, isn't it?
Well, my boss Paul Graham will love to hear you say that, because we love all eyes on it too. Because we love, yeah. I love. I just love the passion of these young men that just put it all out there for their country. It's great. And I think what I forget, obviously this year was different, but I still remember it was Alexei Lafreniere was an underager. I think we were in Russia that tournament, and you go down after, you get to chat with coach, and you get to chat with a few of the players. And it's just, you got to remember, these are kids. Like Connor Bedard is 15, and the stuff he's doing on the ice, like, man, it kind of puts it into perspective how far and how hard these young men are working, and the work and the time that they're putting in. It's an exceptional tournament. It is amazing to see the skill level, the amount of work that these young men are putting into it now, into the game. And it doesn't stop. I mean, Connor Bedard was 15. He went over to play with HV71 in Sweden, started playing with his age group, ended up playing with the U20, the under 20s, right? Dave Struess, his coach in Regina, talks about the fact that Bedard will probably be killing penalties next year, and he's earned the right to probably play 18, 20 minutes a game, just because he takes that much responsibility on himself. So yeah, awesome tournament, Steve. And I feel like I don't need to pump it up. I love it, but I'm glad maybe some people got some more appreciation for it. And it was great that Canada won a gold medal. It was awesome to see during a tough year for people. And if you got to watch some hockey, that's great.
And that was one of the first tournaments that you were down in Texas with Craig Button, weren't you?
We were there. Oh yeah. It was, it was just, again, surreal to go from the lockdowns, and obviously, whether you're in Ontario, Quebec, Eastern Canada, like depending, I mean, pretty locked down for us for a long time. Like I just finally got a haircut like a week ago. So
me too. Trust me, I wouldn't have been doing this if this was a week ago. Trust me.
So, you know what I mean? So like to go down there and it's just wide open. But again, I mean, for me, it felt great to call hockey and to feel normal to hear, there was one I'll just share with you with some levity, like the kind of where we're set up. It was like near the Dallas Stars practice facility is where the medal round was. And obviously they had 2,000 people in the building, and these American fans, they were there for their quarterfinal. And when they scored, and it was a Pastujov goal, but I couldn't see because they jumped up and were cheering. And I had to go to the monitor and double check that it was Pastujov that scores. It was kind of one of those like chip in And I wasn't even like mad. I was like, good for them. They're having a good time. They're having a couple beers and like cheering their team. Like this is what it's supposed to be. So just kind of makes your heart feel better. And even in the States, hopefully we're going in the right direction and we're a little more normal starting the NHL season next year. Let's hope.
Yeah, one more for you, just on that vein, being a guy who does some play-by-play myself. I mean, being in Texas, obviously, is just a completely different experience from, calling games off of monitors or empty concourse levels or whatever. I'm not 100% sure exactly where you were for all of the games, but there was definitely a learning curve and a challenge for broadcasters to get used to different, vantage points, locations, video screens, all of those things. I think were challenges that all play-by-play guys and color commentators and even hosts had to overcome in terms of really bringing these sports in. And I commend people like you for being able to do that. What was it like, the different dynamics of calling games this year?
Well, number one, it's I have the utmost respect for people like yourself, Steven. Anyone that does it, it's not easy. And it's easy to be a quarterback critiquer on your coach and just fire shots on Twitter from your basement, but it's not a job. And I'm blessed to do it. I have the best job in the world. I'll tell anyone that listens that my office, the Bell Center, are you kidding? There's just no be. But, this year you're doing, whether it's a test or you got your temperature check, you have to scan your app twice. You have the mask, and at the Bell Center, their policy was the eyeglasses protective wear. You'd literally walk straight to your area. You had your penalty box. You basically had the broadcast area with the plexiglass up. You could take your mask off once you sat down. You would do your notes, mask on, grab a coffee or whatever, and you'd call the game. And the weirdest thing for me ever was going to a Montreal Canadiens home opener and walking into the rink, and there's just nobody there, and there's not even any traffic. They had their obviously quarantine. They had 8 o'clock, the curfew. Right? Yes, at one point. So, and then walking out of a game, you walk out of a game. I mean, you got a cup final. Like that's what it should be like. Maybe not to that capacity for the regular. Like there's people and there's fun and they're having a whatever. They've had a few beers or they're going out for a drink after to talk to their buddies and there's jerseys, right? And it was just nothing, just silent. And from a color person perspective, I felt for them more. Like calling off monitors is terrible. Like it's just you're not there. You miss out on changes. Maybe you see a player hurt behind the play, but that's for our analysts. It's harder on them. Like we're guessing. They're going to pull the goalie in a regular season game, but you don't know. You can't see Carey Price going to the bench if it's 2-1 with a minute 30 to go. I have no idea. So then you're trying to see on the monitor when the extra skater's out there. Maybe there's a delayed penalty you can't see with the hand up, or maybe, who knows? Like there could be 100 things that, or on the bench, you can kind of be looking to see, is there a skater gone off, or got clipped? Is he back on the bench, or et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I felt more for our color people that do that job. Me, usually where the puck is where you're calling it. But even for us, there's things you like to keep an eye on or check. So as you know, I don't have to tell you like, so, and then keep your energy up. I said it how many times, how much we missed our fans, like in the building, I mean, obviously it's great to have viewers watching us, but like the fans in the building, like in a 1-1 game or a 5-4 game and it's tight and there's saves and that energy you feed off as a broadcaster, my goodness, you can't replicate that sound in there and the bells and whistles. Listen, I give everyone so much credit for pulling it off. Everyone, health from the health standpoint, provincially, to our frontline workers, like just the players had to sacrifice, right? But was it ideal? No, it wasn't. But we all did our best. Like normally, my favorite part is Mike Johnson or Dave Poulin. We go for a glass of wine or a beer after the game, and hey, how's your family doing, or what's going on, and literally mask on, back to wherever, to the airport, whatever, hotel, home, and you don't really hang out. You just
Well, fingers crossed that things will be a little bit back to the way you're expected. You're able to travel on the road, go into all those arenas, feel the joy of the fans, the noise, because I know broadcasters like to feed off the fans as well. I do want to thank you for doing this, Bryan. Enjoy the draft. enjoy the rest of your off season. And before we know it, because it's already July, you'll be back at ready to go for Montreal training camp, and we'll be ready to go back at it again. Thanks for doing this.
Steven, I can't wait. I can only golf so many bad rounds of golf. So at some point, I'm going to put some red wine in this and enjoy the rest of the summer. But thanks for having me. You're inaugural, your first one. So I feel pretty you're first.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Bryan. And we'll catch up again, I'm sure, down the road. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bryan Mudryk, play-by-play voice of the Montreal Canadiens, also covered the U18s this year in Texas, does some curling, a lot of things, taking some time to speak to us here on Broadcast Booth Sessions. I'd like to thank my guest, Bryan Mudryk, the play-by-play voice of the Montreal Canadiens, and also the voice of the Under-18 Hockey Championships, for talking about some of the prospects that he saw and the Montreal Canadiens season that was. We'll be back with more of the Broadcast Booth Sessions. I'm Steve Clark, and thanks for watching.